Hello, YSB scholars. Welcome to week 14 of study group. This week, we'll be talking about creating your environment and setting up your workspace for success. So to begin for today, what we'll do is just go over our vision and mission. So it's important that we, again, always just review why we here, why we choose to come to Y Scholars and what our goals are. So our vision once more is to elevate people's growth mindsets so we all achieve higher ambitions. And our mission is to guide first-gen high school students so that they obtain a college education. So again, these are important just to revisit each time we meet to be a good reminder of why we choose to come here and commit to this program. So to begin for today, our purpose again for study groups is to increase our connections with other Y scholars, improve your student success skills, and also guide you to practice your growth mindset. So these are our three main focuses for study group and purposes. And this again is why we choose to commit to these sessions. So again, we could benefit from what we hear from each other, what we hear from the program, and how we can better utilize that for our own daily lives. So again, as I said, today's program is about creating your environment and setting up your workspace for success. Our session, again, will be successful if we get to know each other. Again, that's to the extent that we are here and participating. Assess our current study areas and identify steps we can make to improve our environment for success. So it's always good to keep in mind where we study and how we study and how our environment also plays a role and kind of influences our motivation and engagement with our work. We want Y scholars to dive deeper into how we can be the ones making change and learning to really be more considerate of our environments. That way we can create better study habits and study areas. So again, we have a setup that really motivates us and drives us to do our work and engage efficiently. So for today, we'll also be considering different workspaces. So at first, we might not realize that our workspace does drive our engagement and motivation. And this is why it's important to assess and really be more considerate once more of how we study and where we study. So looking at our first example, we have here this bedroom. So this bedroom, some of the things we notice about it is that it's messy. It's messy that we can't even see that table that's there because again, besides being piled with academic tools and resources, like the couple of books there, it's also surrounded by other things that it makes it hard to be accessible. It also has clothes on top. It has food items. So again, there's just kind of that puzzlement of whether this desk is really for academics or if it's just another item thrown into this room. So again, for this study area, we would find it hard to believe that a student could be successful or productive, given that there's not that much space, it's very disorganized, and again, it's not as accessible or resourceful as it could be. In comparison, when we look at this next example, we see that there's more space. So there's more open and more room for us to move in. And again, besides that, it's more organized in that there's more resources like the cabinets that are located to the far left of the room that again can be utilized for different resources like paper, pens, textbooks. There's also the printer that's on top of the shelf, which again is resourceful if we ever find that our academics calls for something that needs supplemental work that's off of the internet. So again, if we need to print anything, that's there. We have a desk that's clear, has space for us to work, and it's not very hard to access this space or environment because again, it's more open. So some things I'd like for us to consider is how these two environments and work areas differ. So this is the cluttered room versus the organized room. So if we go back to the clutter room, at least in my perspective, I would feel very overwhelmed and anxious. I wouldn't be able to do any work here because again, you're distracted by all of these different objects in the room. There's not really time or as efficient areas to really focus and engage on schoolwork. Whereas in the next example, in the organized room, there's more space and less distraction. So there's less for us, again, to lose our motivation to work. And instead we can better engage with our own studies and environment due to the environment stability and organization. Moving forward, I'd like for us to really also consider these next two workspaces. So here is an example setup of, again, a office that some organization may find beneficial for their workers. So some of the benefits to this is that there's the privacy. So we need to also consider that when we have a shared workspace, how far or what our limits are in regards to working with others. So again, this is useful or can be useful in the workspace in that when you have those dividers and separation, you have that really time to engage with yourself instead of communicate. But again, some benefits to this is that low rise setting that again allows for communication if you're willing to work for it. So those put in walls are tall again that they guarantee some privacy, but again, if you put that effort to stand up and communicate with your peers, that is also an option. So again, it's an environment that supports both individual and group success. So that can be a benefit and be a reason as to why some organizations and offices are set up in this manner. But as we compare this to this next example, it's more of an open space. So one of the first things I've noticed in comparison to the previous one is that, again, this example is more open and it's more of an environment where you can approach others and really collaborate versus this here where there's really that segregation between colleagues. Another difference between the two would be the lighting. So in this example here, it's more well lit, there's more windows. So it gives a more livelihood, more liveliness to the environment. And this again is more beneficial in that when the area is again more uplifting, it motivates you to work. So some of the things that differ again from this example to the previous is that lighting. So here is the dim lit room, which again could persuade us to or convince our own minds that we're more sleepy, less engaged, less motivated because there's that less liveliness to the room. Whereas in this, again, next example, there's more light. And besides that, there's also plants. So again, when we consider our environment, we need to really consider how those objects around us affect us. So one would be light. A second would be plants that, again, it also adds liveliness to the room, of freshness. And with those different objects that are there, I am assuming intentionally, it really does drive that motivation and engagement in work. Another comparison is, it's hard to see, but would be again the colors. So here there's darker colors, which again really keep us more less engaged with our work because again those dark colors don't stimulate the same energy as these colors here. So that red prompts us to be more alert, more focused, more engaged. So besides lighting, we should also consider the colors in our environment and how that either could support us in our academics, support us in our engagement at work, or really hinder us. So moving forward, we need to always consider our environment because our environment matters. This is where we're inspired. This is where we learn. This is where we grow. So taking that time to really engage with ourselves and reflect on where we work will benefit us in the long run. Again, because once we optimize our environment, we're able to again optimize our work. Moving forward, I'd like for you guys to go ahead and open your emails, and in your email, there should be a study area assessment. part of your assignment for this week is to go ahead and fill out that study area assessment. There are multiple questions in that you answer either true or false, and you really engage and reflect on the environments available to you and whether they're really supporting you in your academics or if they're hindering again your progress. So go ahead and take a couple of minutes to complete that. Now that you've taken the time to going ahead and filling out that study area assessment, I want you guys to go ahead and now rate that out of a scale of 1 to 10. How effective are your study areas and how are they supporting your academic success? Moving forward, what we'd like to share now are tips for creating your ideal study space. So some of the 3 things we can consider when we're creating our environment and make sure that this is best suited for us. We must consider again our space, our lighting, and our triggers. So all of these factors are really unique and personalized to us. Again, our study area may look different than our peers and our colleagues than others around us. So again, we need to make sure that when we're creating our environment, we know that this is strictly speaking and a reflection of how we work and our own study habits. So the first thing we should consider is, again, our space. So what does that mean? Creating your ideal space, you need to know what you need. So what tools do you find that you common or often not use when you're engaging with your work? So some may use notebooks, some may use pencils, pens, rulers, Post-its, whatnot. Besides that, we also should consider our electronics. So if it's whether that we need a computer, iPad, whatnot, do we have that available and do we have that there for us to utilize? And do we also have those secondary tools that help us? So again, with those pencils, do we have erasers? With those computers, do we have chargers? We need to make sure we're considerate of everything we need so we're prepared and we don't have to break in between our engagement with our work, in between our tasks, to go ahead and look for those. So when we consider our space, we must always know what we need and what's appropriate for that work. Besides that, we need to make sure we're creating easy access to your tools. So as we noticed in that disorganized room, in that cluttered room, nothing was accessible. Everything was everywhere and it was kind of hard to locate where everything was. So our tools need to be in a place where it doesn't take much effort to find, where we're able to go ahead and reach at a hand's reach and get them. And why is that important? It's important that we have them accessible again, so they're there and ready for us. So we don't have to waste time going and searching for them. Because again, as we move away from our work environment, this may cause us to disengage with our work, lose our flow, and also really use our time. So we need to make sure that we're using our time efficiently and effectively, and that we have access to our tools and we know where they are. We also must be considerate of those possible scenarios where our tools may be disrupted. This being, in case our computer dies, are we near a charging outlet? Is there that option available in case, again, we come to those circumstances? So again, we need to make sure there's easy access to our tools so we really save our time and we don't have to go ahead and break that flow in our work. So one of the last things we should consider when we're considering our space is to arrange and set up a shared space quickly and effectively. So not all of us are able to or work in an environment that's secluded to us. Again, we most often than not, we have a shared space. So because of that, we need to make sure that it's appropriate and really fits our needs, that it's, again, taking into consideration the other multitude of people around us and ourselves. The next step in creating our ideal study space is to consider our lighting. So it's best if we use natural light, again, if available. And why is this? Natural light has also shown has shown to regulate our melatonin levels. This is the sleep hormone, which helps improve our alertness and productivity. So that natural light really helps us engage with our work. It makes us more alert and more productive, which again, so if you have natural light available, try to use that to your advantage. So if this is not an option, if it's unavailable to you, using natural light as a source, make sure that lamps provide enough light so your eyes are not strained. So again, you don't want to hurt yourself or really have to put extra effort to engage with your work. You want to make sure that, again, that environment is best suited for you to be most productive, and that also includes how comfortable you are. So we want to make sure we're not straining our eyes, we're not straining our mind, we're not using our time ineffectively. So besides natural lighting, we should also consider how those colors around us affect our mood. So certain colors like blues, purples can have a calming effect compared to colors like red, orange, yellow, which are thought to increase creativity and alertness or be visually stimulating. So again, when we have those calming tones where we have like the blues, the whites, the grays, we need to know how to use those and when to use those. So maybe it's best that we use those calming tones again when we're doing work that requires our full attention and ease. So if it's that we're reading, maybe those calm tones will help us, again, really relax and really engage and jump into what we're reading and really communicate with that text. Whereas energizing tones may be most useful when we need more of our brain, we need more alertness. So if we're doing math problems, if we're doing art, where we could really use those energizing tones, those red and oranges, to really stimulate our mind and get us to be more creative. So again, if we introduce new colors to our study environment and appropriate them correctly to the different subjects we have at hand, we could really boost our mood and make us effective in our work. Another tip to creating your ideal space is considering your triggers. So one of the first things is to remove distractions unrelated to your work. So again, only we are aware of our limits. Only we are aware of what can distract us and what is a potential threat to our study habits. So distractions are personally related to how we function and behave, and they may look different across all of us. So it's important that you define what a distraction is for yourself, and you're very firm in making sure that those distractions are away from you. You have to take that responsibility to actually go ahead and take power, take initiative over those distractions, and take control of your setting. So one of the ways we could do this is to strategically place objects that remind you to stay focused on your work or to help you study. So again, we need to make sure that we only have what's going to benefit our work around us, that we have those triggers away. So some triggers, again, can be different across all of us. So some of them may be food, some may be TV. And instead of having those around us, we can replace them with calendars, agendas, a clock, an inspiration board, things that are actually get us to progress in our work. And again, don't pose as a threat to our success and won't disengage us from our work. So in order to differentiate between a possible trigger versus a tool, we must consider, is this going to be a distraction or is it necessary to work? And will it enhance your work? So really taking that time to reflect with those objects in your environment and how they'll influence your workflow will help us really differentiate between those triggers and those tools. So just for the last thing, our final assignment will be to actually draw out our personalized workspace. So our assignment for the week is to go ahead and use a blank white sheet of paper and draw out our ideal workspace. So again, this may look different across us all. So again, when we're drawing out our ideal workspace, we need to consider our space, what's in our environment, what's going to help boost our workflow. We must consider lighting. So we need to strategically arrange ourselves so that we have accessible light and light that's going to really fit and is best appropriate for the work we find ourselves to engage with. And besides that, we must also consider our triggers. So what are the distractions and where should they be placed in our work environment? So this assignment, again, is going to reflect our ideal workspace. We're going to go ahead and draw this out on the white sheet of paper. And on there, we're going to label everything in our work environment and in a few sentences, describe how our environment is best suited to us and how this will benefit us in the long run. So you need to make sure your study area is a place where you go to be creative and productive. Make sure that this area fits to you, that this area is best for making sure that workflow is productive and effective. And as you take the time to reflect and really create this environment that's best suited to you, you're already moving forward and practicing that growth mindset, and that you're taking that responsibility to actually boost your work. You're doing these actions that may seem less integrated into actual academic work, but again, these steps, creating our environment that's, again, good and appropriate for our work, is going to help our academic success in the long run. So thank you for joining today, and I hope that went well for you. I'll go ahead and share more details via Slack or email, really describing our assignment for the week and how we can make up this absence. Thank you.